Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm excited to have you all here with us this evening. These are the troopers, the real educators coming in on a Monday evening for a PD event. Welcome to our Educator Spotlight series. My name is Eric Kelleher, and today's guest with us is Austin Krieg, a science teacher over at Forest Hills Northern. I just want to give a couple of things. If you can see on the screen that says that your screens should be muted, and your videos, if you haven't turned them off, would you please turn them off? Because the session is going to be recorded. So wanted to just go over a couple of items of housekeeping. First and foremost, the goal of today's event is to help you as educators to share best practices for integrating career readiness into your instruction in meaningful and practical ways. And the best way to do that is to hear from other people what they're doing. Because from my experience as a former classroom teacher, more often than not, a lot of us feel that we just, oh, I can't do that, or that looks too hard, or I just don't know where to start. And it's not that we're not willing, it's just that we don't know how. But sometimes we just need to hear from somebody who's doing it and saying, oh yeah, you can definitely do this. And here's a couple of ways I've done it. And sometimes that's all it takes, is to start a spark, to keep things moving and getting rolling, and saying, okay, well, I can be that person too. And so that's what I hope this series is. It's more than just a sketch for you. It's an opportunity for you to hear some cool, new, innovative things that people are doing and integrating into their instruction to make things engaging for their students and relevant. Again, my name is Eric Kelleher. I'm a career readiness consultant with Kent ISD. And again, this event is for you. So I'm going to ask you, while your mics should be muted and your screens should be turned off, at any point, if you have questions, please do not wait until the Q&A period. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start putting your questions in as soon as you start thinking about them, because if we don't answer them immediately, I promise we'll do our best to circle back around to them. We'll be more engaging, and this will be a more robust discussion if we get questions from you. Now, rest assured, if you don't ask questions, I will, but I would rather hear yours. And of course, this event is for you. It's only a half an hour session, but in order for you to get a sketch, that 0.5 sketch for tonight's event, you will have to fill out the survey at the end of the event. Now, you have a couple of days. If you don't get it tonight, not a big deal, but I will give you a survey link at the end of the session that has a 6-digit code. So you will need the 6-digit code and the link to the survey that you must submit in order to get your sketch for the event. But with that, I want to, again, introduce Austin. Austin, again, is a science teacher over at Forest Hills Northern. And I'm going to stop my PowerPoint and pull it back over to Austin. And Austin, welcome.
All right, thanks for having me, Eric. It's a great point. I don't really know what I was thinking when you asked me when we could do this, that the later in the evening was maybe okay, but I wasn't thinking about it being Monday. So you're definitely right. Everybody, I'm impressed with how many people have logged in tonight. So
right.
Eric's asked me to share a little bit about some career exploration involvement that I've had with some various projects. I think he hit the nail on the head. I'd like to share with you guys, there's some concepts that I'd like to share with you. Some of the projects I've done might seem kind of grandiose in some different ways where it might not relate to you, but I think some of the principles that are there are something that you could be able to walk away from today and start incorporating in your classroom right away. So again, just to reiterate, I'm going to go through a couple of slides relatively quickly because I would like to hear your questions as well. So if you have them, I think you guys have access to the chat. So if you guys can put your questions in the chat, we'll make sure that we circle back to them and get them answered. Okay. Let me make sure I get to the right slide here. I don't want to get too far ahead. So if you guys are curious, this is my contact information, email probably the best, but my Twitter account, Instagram as well. Those are education based for the most part. So the first project that I wanted to talk to you guys about, it's a PBL project called Catch the Fever. We utilized this from the Buck Institute, or it was called the Buck Institute. Now it's PBL Works. But this was a project that we did a couple of years ago. Interestingly enough, a lot of our kids were well-versed. They're like, hey, remember when we did that project now during COVID? And we understand why it's so important to wash our hands. But we did a disease control project that was focused on 3 diseases that are on the upswing in the Michigan area. It was West Nile, Legionnaires, and hepatitis A. And the student's requirement was to come up with a solution to those problems. And it could have been for a specific group of individuals if they found that some groups were more affected than others for various reasons. But the general idea was that they were going to collaborate, work together, and come up with a solution to that problem. One of the scary things for the kids was that they weren't just presenting to their teachers, they were presenting to a number of industry professionals, which is one of the points that I'd really like to kind of take home. A lot of times with career exploration, I think a lot of people think, how do we teach the content and the career exploration component? So for this particular project, I thought it would be valuable to note that teachers that participated or observed noted that there are 8 English standards covered in this project, 6 social studies, 8 science, 17 geometry, and 5 engineering standards. So we covered a ton of content. So it is very, I guess the main point is here, it is very feasible to do career exposure exploration and still cover the content that the state wants you to. One of the things that was very exciting for me as an educator, as well as our students, is that the students worked with or presented to the following industries or institutions. So we had some work that we did with the state CDC. We had multiple Kent County CDC representatives come in to evaluate the students' work. We actually had an entire grad class from Grand Valley State University of epidemiology and the head of epidemiology at GVSU come down to help evaluate students' work. We had nonprofit organizations. One of the diseases in particular, the students found that it has a significant impact on the homeless population. So there are a number of nonprofits that were involved. And then we had some nurses and doctors and medical practitioners that participated as well. So one of the really cool things that I noticed about this as a teacher is that when we involve some of these outside connections, some of these different industry components, the kids' willingness to work and produce a very high quality product skyrocketed. They weren't worried about, okay, how do I get an A, or this is good enough for me? They were like, I have to, and we also had a number of building level administrators, a superintendent was there, things like that, where they weren't just, okay, I have to impress my teacher, I need to put my best foot forward, period. No kids were worried about getting A's anymore. They were worried about doing a really, really good job when they kind of had this high stakes presentation, being able to present to different organizations such as this. Another project that we have worked on kind of over the last couple of years, and I have a special guest that I'm going to introduce in just a second. But some of you guys may be familiar with the nonprofit called In the Image. They do a lot of work for the low-income families of the Grand Rapids area. They're most famous for their shoes program, but they have a number of goods there, deodorant, diapers, where they literally, they're free. They give the stuff away and they work very, very hard to do a good job and service as many people in Grand Rapids as possible. We actually currently, we've partnered with Consumers Energy and In the Image. Consumers Energy has an ongoing project where they typically work with schools to take a look at their lighting and find ways to cut costs, where we work on payback period and different things like that to switch from fluorescent or incandescent lighting over to LED to improve energy efficiency. So one of the projects with this, and one of the things you might be saying is, okay, Austin, that's great that you did this cool project and you had all these cool people come into your building. One of the unique things about this project is that it has been done, at least this year, it has been done completely remote because we are not allowed to have individuals come into the building and we're not allowed to have our students go on field trips. So this is where, I know Eric's not going to bug me, but I told Eric, I said, this is where I want you to ask me, Austin, where do you make some of these connections? So one of the ways for a quick plug for the work that Eric's doing is I continually attend the Teachers in Industry Professional Development. I always learn something new, but the most important thing that I get is I get more business contacts. So In the Image is an institution that I'd never heard of before. And we were walking through with myself and one of my teaching partners, and he said, their lighting is really, really bad and really, really old. This would be a great place to do an energy audit because we previously had done it at our school. So I got in touch with some of the people at Consumers Energy, and they're like, we'd be ecstatic to do that. And we actually have our final presentation for this project this upcoming Wednesday, where our students are going to be presenting to the executive board of In the Image about their findings and cost analysis and what's going to work for In the Image and how that can push their mission forward. To that point, I know I'm an educator, but I invited one of my students in. So we have William Swider here today, and he, if he's ready, has a quick thought to share with you guys. I'm going to unshare my screen so that I think we can see him as well. So Will, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, go ahead, buddy.
All right, so hey guys, my name is Will Swider. I'm a sophomore in the STEM Academy at Forest Hills Northern High School. And I came on today to talk a little bit about our In the Image project and project-based learning that we've been doing in STEM recently. So one of the things that Mr. Krieg was talking about, it's a really big impact to me as a student, is to work with industry professionals. To know that, it's not just a mock situation where I'm gonna build a presentation that I could present to professionals and then present it to my teachers and just have it go to the grade book. This is an opportunity for letters of recommendation, internships, things that could make a significant impact on my life. That could be the difference between getting into a college or getting a certain internship. And I mean, that, like Mr. Krieg said, that really changes it from grades aspect to entirely to trying to make the best work I can possibly produce. And then my other point that I have to make today is something that I'm sure many of you as teachers have heard. I know I've said it 1,000 times, is when will I ever use this? That's something that has not happened this year. Now, because in the past couple of years of school, I've been in kind of a lesson test, repeat curriculum. And I'm not going to deny that definitely works for some classes. There's no question about it. But in something like chemistry, where you can have these connections and you can work with real people, it really makes a significant difference as a student to be able to apply the stuff that we learn into a real life situation. Just for a quick example, we learned how to do stoichiometry, which is a piece of chemistry and math. And within maybe 3 or 4 days learning how to do it, we were already using it to calculate kilowatt hours directly into dollars for our presentation. And we didn't use a single arbitrary number on the paper. We were, calculating dollars spent in energy directly into carbon emissions. And that just, if you gave me a stoic problem right now, I could probably do it without thinking, because it's so cemented in my head from actually using it. It's a really great experience to have. And then the last thing I have to say is specifically working on this project, but I'm sure a lot of others, I'm very motivated to do my work for this project because I know I have an actual impact. If I save In the Image, $1,000 more than we would have if I spent an extra hour working on it, and looking for extra solutions, that's more kids that can go to school with shoes through the shoes program, or that's more families that can get provided with diapers with newborns. That's something that I've never experienced in school before, and it feels really, really good to have a profound impact on my community. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Mr. Krieg. But
Now, Will, I don't want you to go anywhere. I want you to stick around, okay?
Yeah,
because there
no
might be some
problem.
questions directly for you at the end here.
Gotcha.
All right, thanks a lot, Will. Excellent job. You're giving me a bunch of warm fuzzies, right? It's makes me feel good. That's what every teacher wants to know, is that the work that they're doing is making an impact. So thanks for sharing that. Let me make sure I'm back in here. Okay. One last project that I wanted to share, and there are others that I've done as well, that feel free to ask when we get to that point. But one thing that I put together, this was a little bit less content specific, but in one of our special interest programs, we put together something that is called Industry Month, that is very, very specific to, some of the work that Mr. Kelleher, that Eric has been doing over the years, where we didn't want to, I don't want to say get bogged down by content. There are a lot of different content connections, but from a chemistry standpoint or biology, there wasn't a whole lot in this, but it was really, really great career education pathway exposure. So what we actually did, I had put together, I'll try to make this a short story. It was about March 10th. I had just finished up putting together 5 field trips. This was of last year, 5 field trips. I broke up our cohort of students that was about 115 students into 5 different groups, 5 different projects. We had received 5 different problem statements from different companies, and our students were going to work on solutions to these real world problems that these businesses had that they either didn't have enough time to get to, or they were overstaffed or understaffed, or in some cases, these businesses really just wanted to connect with students and see, you know, the type of kids that we've been producing in some of our programs. As you all well know, a few days after March was lined up and I had everything perfectly dotted all my I's and crossed my T's, had everything lined up, that's when everything shut down for COVID. So I was not happy with how much work that I had put into the project. And I reached out to one individual in particular, which led to another, one of those being the president of Advantage Research, who I'll introduce in just a second. But what we did during COVID, and this is what really helped me realize that during COVID, where we have to do a lot of remote learning, that we can still do this career exploration component with our learning. So the president of Advantage Research said, hey, yeah, let's go ahead, let's move forward. And what we initially did was we had partnered with Advantage and Kitchen 67, because as many of you know, the restaurant industry has changed drastically since COVID has hit. And we focused on collecting data. We produced surveys. We did a number of different components with Advantage Research, which is a market research company. And then we utilize that data to share with Kitchen 67 to make recommendations about their pickup and delivery service options to help push their work forward and increase business for them. There are a few other components to that I could share, but for the sake of time, I do want to turn some time over to David Sokolowski. So he is the president of Advantage Research, and he's going to share a few of his thoughts about his experience working with our students and with the teacher being an intermediary for this project. So David, if you're there and you want to go ahead and jump on, we're ready for you.
Sure. So we actually had a group of students that signed up for Industry Month, and that group doubled in size, my group, with COVID. So what we did is the students got together, they actually researched the industry, came up, developed an entire questionnaire on their own. We guided them, Austin and myself and Eric Baird, guided them a little bit in the writing of this questionnaire. Once they completed the tool, these kids actually went out and did the data collection of 175 individuals. Once they got all the data back, they compiled the data, ran the data tabulations, and ended up with some very impressive and meaningful, tangible results that we actually, in beyond the Kitchen 67, we ended up donating, the school and myself, donating all of the data and the research to the Stark Garden, so that these restaurants that came to them that say, heck, do you have any advice or any suggestions for us? Because we're getting hammered. They could share that data to any of those restaurants that came to them. So my experience was that, first of all, I couldn't believe the involvement and the excitement from the students to actually get involved. And they were pushing and driving me to, at some point, we broke up into little groups and we had up to 9 Zoom meetings in a week. And these students would schedule them on their own. Wow. And really wanted to get into it. They were all hands on deck. So the long story short of this is I ended up hiring 3 of them in an internship program that are still currently working with the company, because like Austin said, this whole thing started out that each company was supposed to give 2 or 3 problem statements that these kids could actually work on solving. So now I've now taken those 3 students under my wing and have hired them, and they have attacked all of those problems, came up with solutions. I have owned my marketing research company for 24 years, felt that I was a little bit stale. They just brought in new life, new ideas, new technology, to my amazement. And I keep saying to these 3 students, hey, are you bored? Or no, we want to continue. We want to do more. And matter of fact, I've spoken to my friends. So I offered them to each, and this is a paid internship for these 3 students, to see if they wanted to each bring on one other student on a non-internship and get involved in the process. And each of them were able to come up with 1, if not 2 or 3 students that were extremely interested to get involved and work on real world problems and get involved. But I think it's really important that we grow this and get different types of industries. I mean, marketing research is a great tool on its own. Many end users have internal marketing research departments. So, it really sparked a lot of interest in these kids to research where this could lead.
Thank you, David. And
You're welcome.
thanks, Will and David, for jumping on here and being a part of this. I really, really appreciate it. One last thing that I wanted to share, kind of breaking this down maybe a little bit more from a simple approach, because some of the things that I've done, I've definitely built my way up to some of these projects that we've talked about. It does require a certain degree of vulnerability as a teacher. It does require a certain degree of support from your administrative team. But I think a couple recommendations that I wanted to share, and then just very quickly, and then get into some questions. Getting out of your own way can be tough. A lot of times as a teacher, we feel like we have to be in 100% control. As David will probably support the concept that I had to put myself in the back seat in a lot of different situations to make sure that this work could actually move forward, because I'm not a market research expert. I'm not an energy expert. I'm a great teacher. I know my science content inside and out. And I think sometimes we have this tendency to want to be in complete control of everything that's going on. We got to let loose a little bit to make sure that we can allow some of these things to happen if you want them to. I recommend starting small. Sometimes that can be having professionals, even if it doesn't tie into what you're doing, have professionals come in and explain a little bit. When you hear what they do, a lot of times it's easier to be like, ooh, I could connect this to this unit or that unit. And that way in the future, if you build that network, that professional network with individuals or different institutions, you can call them back up in the future. Having professionals evaluate student work is another really simple one. Calling up some different institutions, college professors, businesses, some groups that do what you're currently working on. I cannot tell you how much higher student engagement is when you bring in an industry expert from out of town, so to speak, whether they're Zooming in or whether they are able to come into your building when we're able to do that again. And then last but not least, be experimental, try something, be willing to fail. If you're in that position, you're going to learn from it and you're going to do a better and better job as you move forward. Yeah, I want to stop and I want to get your guys' questions. So thank you guys for listening, and I'm going to stop talking until you guys have questions.
Before we get into the questions, you couldn't see because I hid myself, but I had a huge smile on my face watching this, Austin. And he knows, he's come to several of my events, but the words he uses, he's probably heard me preach a bazillion times, but student engagement, right? And I know and I believe it, having been a classroom teacher, but not having been an effective teacher, but after working in business, seeing like there's a synergy there, and I believe it. But as the people who come to my events can hear, it's one thing, in many cases as teachers, we're mom or dad, right? We're mom or dad number 2 to our students. And when we get somebody else to come in and speak to things that we could say it out of our own mouths, but when it's this industry professional, all of a sudden it takes it to another level. And it's like, oh, well, that really, really means something, even if Austin himself would have said it. But not only that, the relevance, because Will said earlier, when are we going to use this in the real world? That's the phrase I say in my events all the time. If your kids are asking, when are we going to use this in the real world? It's not because they're all Maybe a couple are rude, but a lot of times it's a legit question. It's a question saying, I need to see that this is relevant, because as a former language arts teacher teaching Macbeth in class, I understand that was part of the curriculum and we had to do that. And it was my job to try to make it as relevant as possible. But looking back now, there's so many more things I could have done to do a better job of even tying Macbeth to make that relevant somehow to today. Bringing in business partners, giving them challenging questions and giving them prompts to solve. That's exactly it. So I do want to make sure I give some time to answer some questions here, because I could talk and talk. So I'm loving this, huge smile on my face. A couple of questions that came in. Want to ask, first and foremost, are you willing to share out your PowerPoint, Austin? Because you had links. Were those links to content?
They were not links, but I can give you guys whatever you need. I mean, you guys know how it is. There's lots of documents associated with these projects. My best recommendation, I mean, you can definitely have a link to the slide deck that I have here, but maybe that'll help you develop some questions, but reach out to me via email. I'd be happy to share anything. This is really exciting for me as a professional, and I think teachers are looking for opportunities to do this. It's just, we maybe haven't, there's a lot of different reasons why we haven't done this. So I'll leave it at that, but definitely reach out to me, please.
And if Austin sends me the slide deck, I'll make sure I put it in with the recording, because the people watching it on demand will have access to it as well. So for those of you who are going to be tuning in later, we'll make sure you get your hands on this. A question that came in: does your class plan to follow back up within the image to see how much money was actually saved based on the recommendations, or if they implement them?
Will, you think you can answer that in 20 or 30 seconds?
I think I got it. All right. So we actually, as part of the collaboration with Consumers Energy, we have all the numbers and we have all the calculations for the next probably 5-10 years already finished. So we can tell them, that's a big part of our presentation, is we can actually tell them how much they're going to save in X number of years before they even decide if they want to do it or not. So like, I've got the presentation up right next to me. We're saving them just shy of $6,000 a year right now. Every year after about 3.5 years, which is our payback period, which is the time that in which that annual money saved is going to pay off the materials that they need to buy now. So yeah, that's what I've got.
Cool. And I know we're just about out of time, but I don't care. I'm going to just ask just a couple more questions. So one question for you, Will. I mean, I can definitely hear it in your voice. Have you enjoyed learning the content, and does it seem more meaningful to you now that you're actually putting it into action as opposed to just learning? Like you said earlier, learn, test, learn, test.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's something that's completely new to me. You know, I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with it. I went to Goodwillie for 5th and 6th grade, and that was a similar idea, but this really drove it home. Yeah, I mean, the contrast, I can't put into words the contrast between that lesson test and project-based learning.
Yep, absolutely.
It's just, yeah.
All right, question for you. One more question for you, Austin, that came in. What support have you had from your administrators when it comes to projects like this? Thank you, Will.
We actually, it's a great question. And there's a couple things that I want to address with that one. One, here we have a lot of support. We have a number of, our building principal has kind of had an open door about anything that is research-based that shows that it's in the best interest of students. So when we come to him and we say, we want to do this or we want to do that, he is always open to it. So I think that's a really big deal. I know, not everybody has that opportunity or is in that situation. But another thing, if any of you are interested, I recently finished my master's degree in educational leadership, and my thesis was the merits of project-based learning and how it shows that college and career readiness and high standards testing like the ACT and SAT, kids do just as well, if not better, in those areas with project-based learning. So if you do need ammunition to talk to an administrator about doing a unique project or something that maybe doesn't fit in the existing curriculum, let me know, because I'd be really happy to share that with you. I have a lot of different recent studies from 2015 up to now that can support that thinking if your administrators are willing to hear it. But supportive administration it always feels good too when you're doing something and you know that your administrators have your back with what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I need to finish up here. I would love to talk. I have more questions, but I just want to be sensitive to everybody's time. I do want to wrap up with just a couple of things here, and then I want to finish with the thank you. But just wanted to let people know some upcoming PDs. So the Educator Spotlight Series, what this is today, I've got 2 more scheduled before the end of the school semester, or before we hit a winter break. On November 23rd, it's a Monday at 3:30 is Amanda Barbour, who is an elementary teacher, PEAKS teacher in Kentwood Schools. And then on December 14th, we have Dan McElhaney and Lynn Svengros from Forest Hills Eastern talking about project that they did. So if you're interested in doing this, sign up for the next couple that we have coming on. If they're not in the PD Hub yet, which I don't think these are, they should be any day now. I've been trying to get these in, but they're really backed up in getting these made available. Also, Austin has talked several times about our educators in industry. It was teachers in industry. We've changed the name to educators in industry. But because we can't do these face-to-face, we're just trying to, like everything else, be adaptable. And instead of full day experiences, we're doing 1 hour, 15 minutes, 1 hour to 1 hour and 15-minute sessions. Again, they're being recorded. So if you can make it live, if you're a classroom teacher and it's just not feasible, they'll be recorded and you can download them on demand after the event. But November 17th, we're going to be meeting with Founders Brewing Company. They said they would love to do a happy hour, but that's probably not going to be feasible, but we'll still get a chance to get a little bit of a behind the scenes look. And December 9th, we're going to be meeting with 20 Monroe Live and entertainment industry and seeing how they've been dealing with things, especially during COVID. 2 other things, we're currently doing programming, Zello and career cruising trainings for those who are in districts that are using Zello or their older version career cruising. If you want to find out more about that, those are going on right now. And something that I did a few years back and I'm bringing back with a colleague of mine called the Career Readiness Network. This is going to be on December 7th. It is during the school day from 8 to 11. So that will be a day thing. And that's probably not going to be recorded, but it'll be a live session. But if you and any team members are able to get time off to attend that virtually, that'd be a great opportunity. And finally, just last 2 things here. If you're interested, and this is where I need your help, if you're interested in sharing about some of the cool things you're doing with career readiness, whether that be a classroom teacher or if you're a counselor and you and people in your building are doing some innovative stuff, I want to hear from you. I just spoke to somebody today. She's going to be a guest. She's actually not in Kent County. She's up in the UP. And we're going to be having somebody come in on January talking about geometry and construction. And for those who have come to my events in the past, you've heard me talk about it. She is actually implementing geometry and construction and a program called AMPed, which is algebra in manufacturing. And she's going to be talking about that in January. But if you're doing something cool, I would love to interview you and have you kind of share the things that you're doing. If that's the case, just go ahead and fill out the survey at bit.ly/spotlight guest. bit.ly/spotlight guest. And then finally, as promised, here is the link to the survey. And again, you need that 6-digit code. It is bit.ly/ESS/ or I should say dash sketch. bit.ly/ESS-sketch. And the 6-digit code is 177493. 177493. And once again, I just really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I can tell people are engaged and they're enjoying that. Thank you to you, Austin, Will, and David. Appreciate your time. I think you guys said a lot in volume, and just in the couple minutes that you spoke, said more than I think for myself, for sure, and definitely even for Austin. You just were able to speak volume. So thank you once again. We're about 5 or 6 minutes over, so I want to let everybody go. Thank you so much. If you still have questions, feel free to stick around for a minute or 2, but I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. Thanks, and have a great evening.